for your benefit, we'll be looking at the current status of food packaging. Now, in any country, if you look at the status of the packaging industry, then it is ranked almost third and next to only food industries and petrochemical industries. In most of the countries, petrochemical industries and food industries belong usually to the first two categories, and if not third, then at least the top 5 industries. If you look at it, packaging industry will be there for sure. Now, the global market size of these packaging materials is forecasted to increase from anywhere between 851 billion, which is an estimated figure by market intelligence companies in 2007, and they have projected it to be at nearly $1,000 billion in 2022, very specifically 980 billion US dollars. Now, out of this total packaging market, it includes food packaging, it includes pharmaceutical packaging, and it includes other industrial packaging. When you look at the size of the food packaging market, then it's about 289.5 billion in 2018, and by 2024 it is expected to reach 372.8 billion US dollars, registering a cumulative annual growth rate of 4.3%. Now, if you look at the packaging materials market, we all know that packaging materials just not belong to the class of plastics. They include glass, they include the wood, they include the bioplastics, right? And also to certain extent, very limited, the ceramics. Now, the cumulative growth rate, as it has been projected here as 4.3, is the overall industry growth rate. But if you look at the packaging material wise, whether it could be a flexible market or rigid market, then they may differ. And in most countries, and it is very likely that flexible packaging materials, that means the paper and paperboard, the plastics which are in foldable form or which are easily converted, and then the other similar materials of flexible nature where the force required to tamper them or to deform them is very low. Such materials are considered as flexible packaging materials, and their growth rate is very high, 10.14%. And their counterparts, that is the rigid packaging materials like the metal containers, like cans, the rigid bottles, and other rigid containers, their market is nearly half, 5.71% respectively, right? And the biggest global packaging market, as looked by the industry personnel, it is the Asia Pacific region, which includes China, India, and Japan. And for the obvious reasons that China and India both are the largest population containing countries or populous countries. So because of this reason, the market is very high in these areas. Look at a bit old data published by Euromonitor, another market intelligence leader. In 2016, they have estimated the total packaging volumes in different continents, and you can see that the market for packaging materials is very high within the Asia and Australasia markets. And you can see that the next big market is in Europe and US, followed by within the Europe also, you see that this figure demarcates the Russian countries as well as the other Middle East and the countries which are close to France, Spain, and others. They have classified them. But if you put together, the next biggest market is the Europe, right? There is a very huge market potential in the African subcontinent as per this particular estimates or the sales of packaging packed volumes, right, in these particular continents. Across the globe, the packaging materials share is something like this, which you are looking at on the screen. The paper and paperboard are the largest materials which are currently used, followed by flexible packaging materials, then the rigid plastic materials. Later to this is the metal and glass. Now, in any country, if you look at it, paper and paperboard based materials are the top ones. This is the global figure, but in any country, if you look at it, the market share of the individual packaging metals are very close to this global share. When we talk about the Indian packaging industry, it is again the largest industry within the top 5 in this country too, and it represents about 4% of the global market. And look at the annual growth rate, it is projected to be at around 18% per annum. Although in 2015, this market was about $32 billion, it is expected that by this year end, this is going to reach $72 billion. That is nearly representing about 7% of the global market. Now, many reports have said that in spite of this global pandemic, the effect on packaging materials is not that much as it was expected. In fact, in certain segments, the packaging materials demand was more looking at the safety aspects. So food and packaging, they are the two important industry segments which always go in hand in hand. And whenever there is a large increase in the demand of food, on the other hand, you can equally look at the demand for packaging materials, and more so under these conditions where people are now more conscious about health and health foods. Now within the segment, as just mentioned earlier, here in India too, the flexible packaging materials growth rate is much higher, and it's about 18% for the rigid packaging materials, but for the flexible materials, it is 25%. So huge market potential. And sometimes we know that this market potential, we look at an unnecessary requirement, but still there is a demand. We'll come to know the factors which affect this kind of requirements in the world. Now, the per capita consumption of the packaging materials in India is about 10.5 kg per annum. When compared to the developed nations like the US, Europe, China and Brazil, we are much far behind according to the Wisconsin Export Potential and Development Center. These are the statistics. So there is a huge potential in countries like ours, and there is a stagnation in developed nations such as US and Europe. Although there is a good potential for these materials in China and Brazil. So our per capita consumption per kg per annum is about 10.5%. That means as an individual, we are consuming nearly about 10.5 kg of packaging materials, whether it could be the metal, paper-based materials or glass, plastics, etc. It is 10.5 per kg per annum. Another important issue is we are importing nearly 45% of the packaging machinery and materials from abroad, and all this material are nearly imported for the food processing sector alone. Out of the 100% packaging machinery and materials that we are importing, nearly 50% we are consuming it for food processing sector alone. So huge demand for food processing industries. On the other hand, equal demand for packaging machinery, and most of them are imported from Taiwan, Singapore, the China and related or those countries from where we get low cost machinery on year-to-year basis. Now, during the last year, it could be seen that the imports of packaging material or packaging equipment, machinery imports was nearly about 130 million US dollars till last year. On an average, this was the imports. So huge demand for such kind of packaging machinery too. Now, out of all the packaging material consumed in India, the largest share, nearly about 80%, it goes for food and beverage market. That means food industry is the of packaging industry. Within the beverage sector, if you look at it, the glass and rigid plastics account for nearly 70%, right? Your glass bottles or PET bottles or any other one, you can name it. And even now you can see that polypropylene is the plastic which is sought after by the industry where they want to replace glass bottles, if not PET. Now, PET is mostly used to package drinking water and which is accounting for nearly about 55% of the India's packaged water segment. In certain other cases, you also find that pouches are used, but they are not belonging to the PET class. Now, you might have read in newspapers that a couple of years back, the Food Safety and Standards Authority of India has conducted a countrywide survey to look at whether PET is causing any harm to the consumers, because it is most likely to be the common material used by the food industry, and increasing use of this material has caused a concern. So the FSI have taken up a project, and then it came out with a recommendation and conclusion that PET is one of the clean packaging materials with the least amount of migration from such material, making it the safest material among the available materials. Now, by 2023, the PET market is projected to reach about 142.2 billion US dollars with an annual growth rate of 4.17%. More and more demand is getting from the beverage packaging with regard to the usage or replacement of glass bottles by the multi-layered cartons, aseptic cartons or cartons. You might have come across in some of the multinational, the metro cities, where the companies are now targeting the consumers and selling the conventional products which are usually sold in glass bottles in the new materials like the aseptic cartons, 6-layered or multi-layered aseptic cartons. Now, one good example is that the alcoholic beverages now being packaged in aseptic cartons and sold in Bangalore, Mumbai, Pune, replacing the glass bottle. There are, multifarious advantages of replacing glass bottles. So this is one new segment that is coming up in the Indian market. If you look at the top trends of packaging in 2019, on the left hand side of your screen, these are the ones which are the global trends, and on the right side, what exactly has happened in the Indian context. Now, worldwide, flexible packaging continues to grow. There is no replacement for the flexible packaging materials, especially the plastic ones. And there is a new demand for luxury packaging and for consumer goods in terms of the aesthetic value that they are adding to such produce or commodity, or providing some functional or convenient feature. The biggest boom has come in terms of the e-commerce. Your Flipkart, Snapdeal, Amazon, right, Wish, and several other e-commerce companies selling their produce, selling their produce to the consumers who are sitting at their tables or desks and supplying the material, now require more amount of packaging materials. Even if you order a small pen, it comes in a nice attractive package of plastic as well as an corrugated fiber board as a secondary package, and another flexible material to cover it. And then, so a single pen which could have been directly purchased from the shop, now because of this e-commerce, you are inviting more and more amount or demanding more amount of packaging materials. So this is rising. And you also see that now industry is using or adopting to the policy of reusable packaging. Now, this is all related to the global policy of reducing the plastic waste, reducing the packaging material waste. So we'll come to know more about this, why exactly this is. And now packaging materials are also getting more and more greener. During the last year, people have seen that more amount of biodegradable and eco-friendly or biocompostable packaging metals have come into the market. Now, in India, there were several developments during last year. You could see that the FSSAI has banned the use of recycled plastics and newspapers for packaging for wrapping of food materials. Now, there was a hue and cry, huge hue and cry with the Maharashtra state government banning the use of single-use plastics, followed by several other states. And then they later has amended that. Earlier, they said that not less than 40 microns the packaging metal thickness should be. Now they have changed it to more than 50 microns. Otherwise, the entire dairy industry would have come into stagnation. And slowly, they have raised their thickness from 40-45 microns to 50-55 microns now. Although according to this, it was specified that minimum 50 microns shall be, but the industry was practicing it at 40 or odd. Now, the new FSSAI packaging regulations have come into picture last year from July 1. We could see that earlier during 2011 when FSSAI was enacted, the food packaging regulations were governed together, like labeling and the packaging guidelines were covered together. Now we have new packaging regulations as well as new labeling and display regulations. Another important development that has happened during the last year is before 2019 July, the food contact materials, the migration, overall migration or the global migration limits were referred to under the BIS regulations, but not mandatory ones. Now, since 2019, it has been now made mandatory that any food business operator or food product manufacturer should look at the migration limits of the food contact material that should not exceed 60 milligram per kg or 60 ppm or 60 milligram per decimeter square if you look at in terms of the area. So these are the recent amendments and developments in the Indian packaging market last year. Now, what are the key drivers of packaging industry? Now, there are several drivers. Number one, economic trends, that is the increasing purchasing power among the consumers. So they try to experiment with new food materials. The demographic changes. Now we know that hardly any barrier for the people to move across countries, even if it is for tourism or for career development. People do visit several places, and then when they come back, they put a demand on the local market or local manufacturers to provide such kind of quality materials. So new packaging has come into limelight. Retailing trends, just a couple of minutes back, we have seen that now the entire power of internet is in one's hand and they can buy anything from anywhere in the world. That is putting more demand on the packaging materials. Convenience food solutions is another factor. Now, ready-to-eat foods, your Swiggy, one good example, or the Uber and other kind of online solutions you have, which provide food materials at your doorsteps. So the convenient option is, but it is putting more demand on the packaging materials on the other side too. Health awareness is another important driver. More amount of more awareness among the consumers on with regard to their health is putting more amount of demand on health foods, health supplements and others. So slow segment is also increasing in that manner. One of the biggest driver, which I would say, is through from the supply chain or the logistics end. You might have come across the time temperature indicators that are commonly used in the food industry, and that has come out, or that innovation has come out as a result of the need of the supply chain. So for the frozen foods, people were interested in knowing what is happening during the transit before it reaches to the consumer. So that led to the development of the time temperature indicators. So supply chain demands. Now people are interested in knowing about the freshness or quality of the product even without opening. So new type of intelligent packaging systems are coming out just because of the demand from the supply chain. The globally you see that new and new materials are coming. Sometimes you find that the same LDPE with the enhanced barrier properties, or the nylon with reduced the strength, or the materials which are supposed to be rigid enough or brittle enough, now you find that they are flexible enough. So new materials are coming into limelight. A good example is nylon MXD6, which is very close to the nylon itself, but much higher in terms of their gas barrier properties. New materials are coming in terms of incorporation of nanoparticles into the synthetic or biopolymers, resulting into bio nano composite films or petrochemical based polymer nanocomposites, which are having much additional benefits compared to the conventional ones. And of course, the environmental consciousness among the consumers, among the green tribunals, and among the environmental lovers, you find that the more demand is there on the biodegradable packaging materials or eco-friendly packaging materials, which is putting more pressure on the packaging industry to come out with innovations in such kind of materials. So these are the different drivers. In spite of all these demands, you see that the food packaging industry is surging ahead with more and more demand for packaging materials in the current context. On the other side, there are certain issues which are emerging or cropping up with regard to the packaging industry. One such peak or pinnacle issue is the meeting the requirements of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals means that every after a particular period of time, the United Nations issues certain guidelines where for the well-being of the planet, right? So the sustainability development goals are at the peak because whatever any country is doing, any industry is doing, any research is being carried out, they have to be in line with the sustainable development goals. So we'll come to know what exactly are the sustainable development goals and how packaging industry is getting filled or fixed with this particular issue. The next now buzzword is the circular economy. Now, what exactly is circular economy and how it is going to affect the packaging industry, that we are going to see now. The another one is a lot of emphasis is being given on active packaging, and recent market statistics have been telling that active packaging is a technique of packaging which is going to stay here for more 15 to 20 years from now. And on the same, the smart packaging, which are both connected to sustainable development goals in a broader view. So we can say that these two are also equally important and as a cause of concern in terms of the development. New R&D, new innovation is coming in this line. The big issue is the handling of municipal solid waste. Municipal solid waste means how effectively we are managing our plastic waste in a nutshell. The next issue is how effectively we are using the food waste and what is the role of packaging in food waste. The another one is, are we really able to satisfy needs, or are we really able to satisfy the consumer wants? And how effectively the packaging or food packaging materials are effectively helping to enhance the shelf life of food materials. And on the other hand, which is very close or in line with the municipal solid waste as well as the circular economy, is the single-use plastics. As I just mentioned, several of the industries are now looking at the need for the new materials in terms of replacement of single-use plastics. Now, beginning with the Sustainable Development Goals, quickly let us see that the population, total population is expected to reach uh, about 8.5 billions by 2030. And India, China, and Nigeria are projected to be the top three nations with the highest populations with the age of 16 to 60, nearly about 70%. So this is putting more demand on food, more demand on the packaged food, as well as uh, resulting more packaging waste. So new markets are also expected to grow in Africa because of the buzzing population. Uh, the other one is, on the other hand, because of the improved health system in the world, you also expect the higher age or the median age of average age of population, and this puts a more amount on, or this enhances the aging population. That means old age people are also there to remain for some time. Their requirements are going to be different. The ergonomical designs of packaging metals are going to be different. How much force they have to uh, uh, put on opening a closure, how to handle it, where the grip should be there for old age people. Such kind of designs are required, which may not be the same case for youngsters like many of us, or the children whose requirement is altogether different, and the reason the child resistant packaging is there for them. Now, another important issue is the disease burden and increased non-communicable diseases. You find that more amount of dietary supplements, functional foods, and side by side demand for new packaging materials. If you look at the technological changes in the world, you also find that the electronic groceries are going to increase, and at least 15 times in India, you are going to witness the e-retailing by 2030. Similarly, you might have read in newspapers that the UK is going to ban the petrol and diesel vehicles by 2030 in its country, giving a way for all electric vehicles. So this is a big issue, usage of the petrochemicals for the automobiles, and by 2030 worldwide, you are going to see that nearly 50% of every new sale would be an electric car. Now, we all know how the artificial intelligence is changing the world. The drones may be employed for delivery of your pizzas from by the Domino's or your McDonald's or KFC's. And you also find that the self-driving cars, there won't be any driver. You can just book a car without a driver. Your car may reach at your doorsteps and you may be dropped at your destination. So such is the power of artificial intelligence. And you can expect that with all this, there is a new demand for all the smart devices. Smart devices is going to enhance the internet penetration by nearly 90%. Nearly 5 times, and about 90% of the internet usage will be on mobile. You all know that smartphones are the biggest market. India is the biggest market for this, and worldwide you have started witnessing that smartphones are being used for the quality detection of food, right? And the same is the case with the smart agriculture and smart animal husbandry, and this is where the linking of smart devices with packaging is going to occur. Whatever I have just mentioned are the top trends for 2030, and you can see that everything what we have discussed a couple of seconds back regarding the 2030 forecast are all putting pressure on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. What is the Sustainable Development Goal number 1? No poverty. That means there should be equality among the people on the earth. There should not be any hunger, good health, education, right? Gender equality, etc. You can see that there are several things. The development of smart cities, everything what you are looking at in the current governance are all linked with the sustainable development goals. And there are certain goals which are directly linked with packaging. Let us see Sustainable Development Goal number 2, zero hunger, and Sustainable Development Goal 11, which says that sustainable cities and communities. Now, if you carefully look at this Sustainable Development Goal 2, the goal says that every country should strive hard to make their country end hunger, achieve food security, and improve in nutrition and provide sustainable agriculture. Everything is directly linked to food processing, and packaging is an integral part of food processing. So this goal is directly linked with the food packaging. So whatever we do, we should ensure good quality food, the processed and packaged food, and improved nutrition. That means our packaging materials should retain the nutrients without any loss of the nutrients, and again promote sustainable agriculture. So it should not promote waste. So all these are linked together. So this is one important goal. And the other one, the Sustainable Development Goal number 11, this is again linked with the making cities and human settlements safe, resilient, and sustainable. That means your municipal solid waste has to be minimized, electronic waste has to be minimized, and the city should become more and more smart. Now, when we talk about smart, people using smart devices and smart packaging comes into the limelight here. The second important aspect, as I mentioned, is circular economy. Circular economy, in a nutshell, is nothing but you take up the raw materials, convert them into different packaging forms, and use it for food processing and production. Then at the end, the consumer is going to discard the material, but instead of going it to the waste, the circular economy emphasizes on reusing and recycling, making the demand for new raw materials lesser. So you are trying to put less demand on the nature for your packaging materials. For example, you are interested in making paper and paper boards. You cut trees, extract the pulp, and then make it to paper. And after the product paper or paperboard is used to wrap or pack your packaging food products, then at the end, instead of going into waste, we try to extract the pulp again. The recycled pulp can be subjected to paper making again. So you blend the virgin pulp with the recycled pulp to a certain extent or entirely, so that your demand on the nature is reduced. So circular economy focuses on this aspect. This is an example of Tetra Pak goals on the circular economy. I've taken it from their website. This clearly says that the smart material choices, that means they are now looking at more renewable and recyclable materials, that they want to put lesser impact on the environmental or the environment related damage. They are also interested in reducing the food waste by extending the shelf life, connecting to the sustainability goal again, right? So if you look at any of the top multinational companies, websites, or any other company, now the entire world is focusing on this circular economy. So a big buzzword in packaging industry too. Now we all know that there are four basic functions of packaging: containment, protection, convenience, and communication. When we talk about these functions, you know, the additional function or the benefits that packaging is offering over and above protection is nothing but a new area of packaging called as active packaging. And when another dimension is added to the communication function of packaging, we are talking about intelligent packaging systems, right? So there are new and new demands in terms of active packaging systems as well as intelligent packaging systems. Any doubt or questions till this point of time?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay. You have another class after this?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then what we do is we'll continue this class on the Saturday. We have another class, isn't it? We'll continue this class on Saturday, and I'll discuss about the aspects what I wish to continue in the introductory part. If this is okay, we'll meet again on Saturday. If you have any questions, you can ask or drop in the chat box of the team itself. Any doubt?
No, sir.
No, sir.
No, sir.
No, sir.
No, sir.
Before we actually break, let me take your attendance and download attendance list. Done. I have noted your attendance. Thank you. We'll meet again in the next class.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
sir.
sir.
Okay.